Before TellTale was known for their story-driven adventure series, they started in Boneville. TellTale's first adventure game wasn't about moral choices or branching narratives, it was based on a comic book. Out of Boneville was Jeff Smith's first episode in his Bone series. And this game really feels like a visual novel with some game elements thrown into it. It sort of feels like a point-and-click adventure, but there's barely any puzzles and only a couple good ones. There's only a few times where you actually use an item to interact with the environment, and it's mostly dialogue. And the dialogue's not great.
You look more like a leaf.
A leaf? That's an insult. Where's my big brother?
And you think coming from a comic book, the dialogue would be the strong part, but it's boring. It's dull.
So you're, Ted's big brother.
Yep, that's me. And you better not mess with Ted, or you'll find out just how big is.
But let's start with the story. There's a dragon god that controls dreams, but it's driven mad when it's corrupted. And it starts a dragon war that engulfs the planet. And this game has nothing to do with that. We follow three cousins, Bone, Phony, and Smiley, who get run out of town and get separated in the desert, and we spend the game trying to get them back together. Oh, and you only actually play two of the characters, Phone and Phony. Smiley just shows up at the end. And it actually gets really ridiculous at times that these two are looking for each other, because you play in the exact same environment no matter which cousin you're playing. They show up one after the other. There's even a point near the end where they're standing on opposite sides of a barn at the exact same time, and they still don't find each other. Now, it does have the mechanics of a point-and-click adventure, but they're more simplified. All of the icons like smelling and talking and touching, they're all contextual. You don't choose them. There are only a few items, and I can only remember twice when you actually use an item. There are two identical arcade sections that bookend the game where you're running from a thing, and the second you fail, the game asks you if you just want to skip it. And out of the few puzzles, there's only one good one where you have to cross a river with a bug, but he does two jumps and then one large jump, so you have to pick which rock you're going to at a time. And I actually did get stuck on it for about a minute when I got stuck in a corner. And the overuse of dialogue and the really simple puzzles and gameplay kind of made me wonder who this game is for. I'm guessing it's for fans of the comic since there's more dialogue than game, but the game that is here is really simple, so maybe it's for kids? I beat the game in a couple of hours, and actually the game crashed right before the ending, and there's no autosave, and I wasn't going to play the whole game through again, so I actually had to look up the ending on YouTube just to see how it ends. But even for a game for kids, there's some weirdly on-point dialogue. Phony, he's the one who's always scheming people to try to get rich, and he has lines like, "I'm rich, I don't have to work for anything," and "you can't tell rich people to do anything they don't want to do." But the rest of the writing, there are no jokes, it's not funny, people are just talking. And then it's interspersed by a few puzzles, and that's it. And the critics agreed. It got mid-reviews, it was called slightly amusing, but everyone agreed that it was short and kind of empty and not much of a game. And then when I was doing research for this video, I found out this wasn't the only Bone game. It was planned as a 5-game series, but they only ever made it to episode 2. And since I cleared episode 1 so fast, screw it, double feature. Now, episode 2 did do slightly less bad, still bad though. And episode 2 does go a little bit more into the dragon war thing. Apparently that was supposed to be a bigger issue by episode 5, I assume. But there is a cult that is following Bone, Phony, and Smiley, trying to kill them and take their souls. So apparently this weird little kids game was going to get dark. And while the series never got there, 2 did fix a couple of the problems with 1. The second game is slightly longer than the first game, but they padded out the time with just more dialogue, which still isn't funny or interesting.
You know, you gnaw on bones like that, you're gonna wear your teeth down.
That a fact. Forget King Doc. We could just keep him for ourselves.
Does that mean we can bake him in a quiche?
And puzzles that just waste time. There's a Tetris-like puzzle, but they're only 4 pieces, so it doesn't take very long. And there's another puzzle where you have to mop up footprints, and every 3 turns, more footprints appear, but you have no idea where the footprints are going to appear, so you just have to be lucky that they appear in a place that you can finish the puzzle in 3 turns. The game even makes a meta joke right at the beginning about how short the first game was.
The last one was fun, don't get me wrong, but it was too short.
But there are no more puzzles, there's no more gameplay to it. Again, you get a few items, you get a few puzzles, and only one interesting one. And I guess they didn't think people were gonna play the second one right after they played the first one, because the second game begins with Phony wanting to leave the valley, but Phone not letting them until they find Smiley. But they found Smiley at the end of the first game. And at the start of the second game, Smiley's working in some bar in some town and they don't know where he is. These aren't good adventure games. They aren't good adaptations of a comic. They feel like a proof of concept for better games that they plan to make later. It was like TellTale had the idea to adapt a comic into a game, but then they forgot they had to actually make it a game, and so they just threw some game elements in at the end. The puzzles, they don't add any meaning, they don't add any challenge, they just add more time. They're filler. This all felt like a mix between a children's game and reading a comic book out loud. It was sort of like watching DougDoug play Pajama Sam, but without all the entertainment. Getting through these 2 games is just 5 hours of my life that I'm never getting back. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of TellTale. I think their Sam and Max games are okay. But at least I can appreciate the amount of progress they made from here to where they ended up. And if you are a fan of the later TellTale games, you can skip these. You are not missing anything. But if you have some morbid curiosity to see where they all started, at least getting through these won't take you long. Bone was not the start of TellTale's success. It was a rough draft that they used to figure out what an adventure game actually was. And lucky for the fans, they learned a lot along the way. See you next time.